Здравствуйте, уважаемые коллеги. Я думал, что мы уже за время форума вам надоели, но если остались еще какие-то вопросы, то с удовольствием на них отвечу, пожалуйста. Пожалуйста.
Вот. Но, опять же, повторюсь, журнал «Редкие земли», Роксолана Черноба. Но
The forum itself, however, has caused us a little bit of concern because the Chinese party, the Chinese side was on the left side in the room, but after that, the Chinese occupied the entire hall. And I would like to find out what the concerns are that exist regarding this tremendously rapid development and what will be the situation in 50 years. There are no concerns whatsoever. We cannot develop the economy and be concerned about something at the same time because there's such a notion as the balance of interests of a country. And we need to be very frank and sincere. I talked about it with my colleague from China, and actually it was not just about some abstract phrases about cooperation. We talked about the interests of both of our countries, and many things become very clear when you speak in this language. For example, we discussed the use of land, and he touched upon this issue, saying that there are certain claims, but I said that I had no claims or complaints whatsoever. Or maybe if I have something, it's just to the Ministry of Agriculture of Russia, because we need to first establish the clear legislation in the Russian Federation. We need to understand what part of the land can be allocated for what. We need to discuss this with the population because the land, first of all, belongs to the people that lives here. We understand it very well, and this is why we need to ensure the lawful interests of our people. But if some land is not used, then of course we can lease it for a while. But then there's the question of the time of this lease, of the period, and what we can do with this land, because we understand that land might be depleted after a while. But anyway, we need to write about this in the Russian law. When we do all this, we will be able to start cooperating with our partners. We all understand this very well. We also exchanged opinions on some very important issues and areas of cooperation, and I'm sure that we need to continue working together. We have years of friendly relations. We are huge countries which are neighbors, and we can stimulate each other's economies. And of course, we need to build some principles of cooperation in great detail, and it's all a matter of balance, because as I said during our meeting, we are all interested in the work of financial institutions and investments, and for the time being, this progress is quite slow.
Игорь Петрович, РИА Новости, Андрей Пескунов.
РИА Новости, Andrei Peskunov. Could you please say whether there are any concrete agreements that you have been discussing and that you have come to with our Chinese colleagues? Excuse me, could you please repeat your question? You're holding the microphone too close to your mouth. I wanted to ask you whether you have any particular concrete agreements, whether you have come to any particular agreement with China that you have reached within this forum and which questions were postponed for a future date. You were present at all the sessions and you listened and heard all the topics we have been discussing. I will not be able to cover them all right now in my answer, but we were discussing logistic corridors, shipbuilding, fishery and construction issues. You know that Chinese investors are taking active part in the development of TAD, and we will continue to exchange information. We're going to continue to exchange best practices, which will lay the foundation for future cooperation. We discussed the Big Ussuriysky, Большой Ussuriysky Island, and the governor of the neighboring province proposed to build the passing points, the border passing points. But I said, shall we develop agriculture in this area? Because we have a lot of land there. Let's invite our investors, prospective investors, our friends from China, to visit this island and see what we have been able to create there, not just see the grassland that is there currently. So we're not saying that we don't want to build a border passway, but we're saying that let's first develop the region. Anastasia Sitko.
Вопрос такой, смотрите, в ходе форума сложилось впечатление, что интерес России...
During the forum, we had the impression that the interests of investors in Russia from China and other Asian countries are caused by sanctions from Europe and the United States. So in this complicated and complex economic situation, what are the reasons of this interest? Are China and Asia our only partner in this complex economic situation? Well, it's all very simple. We have and we are holding an economic forum. We do not deal with political issues. This is not our competence, and no one has set any goals like this. The delegations were balanced out on economic principles. We offer new economic and cooperation tools to those who are ready to work with us. If there's a big delegation from China, thank you, we're ready to work with you. When there are big delegations from Japan and Korea, we are ready to work with them too. There were also delegations from European countries. You know that representatives from many big European companies were also present today at this forum, and there were some very serious businessmen from the United Arab Emirates. We have opened the gate in the Far East through new tools of investment. And the most important thing that we mentioned is that the conditions for investing in the Far East have become better. It's more open now, and whether we go in the right direction or not, this forum can provide an answer to this question, because we were planning to invite 1,000 guests, and 2,500 people came here, and we had difficulty with handling this volume, this amount of people, and 5,000 people wanted to come. So this confirms the fact that investors are interested in working here. The second thing is that they are very positive about the legislation changes in the Russian Far East. All the other things are our day-to-day work. This demand, this interest should be converted into money, and the competence that will be brought to the Far Eastern territory. Sometimes I'm asked the question how many agreements were signed and what the amount was. Actually, we never expected this amount because we never had plans to provide a certain total, and actually we didn't have this target in terms of the amount of agreements. But actually the total amount was 1.3 trillion. That's the total amount of the agreements that were signed, and there were about 80 agreements. So this is a very impressive figure. But what we did here today is to sow the grains for new harvest, because people came here to listen to our officials, to the President of the Russian Federation, and now they will be thinking about what they can do here. That's their new investment interest that will be ready for the next forum, where we will gather the new harvest.
Thank you. Vladivostok, Utinkek, just two short questions. Are you glad with the results? Are you happy with the results? Has something gone wrong, or were there any failures? And the second, has Vladivostok been a good host? Will the forum, will this become a platform for future forums? I'll start with the answer to the second question. We will continue to host forums in Vladivostok. The preparation for the next forum will begin in a month's time. Those who had been working for the organization of this forum will have a short rest, and we will start to prepare the next forum for next year in a month's time. Now, as far as the first question is concerned, whether I'm happy or not with the results of my work, had I not been happy, I should have been fired. I try to keep on the level. I try to be very diligent and also responsible. And if we disregard the technology, the methods of preparation for the forum, but the forum and the time and the place, I would like to say that we have chosen the right time and exactly the right place. And the interest to the forum was so high. As you know, one of my colleagues noted that they were ready to come in bigger numbers, but what can I say in this respect? The number of applications for the forum was twice as much as our possibility to host the representatives and the interested parties. But as far as your question is concerned, whether we need to continue with this tradition, my answer is yes, 100% yes. We need this for the development of Russia and the Far East.
Tatiana Gnizilova, the public TV of Primoria. The first question doesn't have anything to do with money. During the APEC 2012 and this forum of 2015, we covered the main issues, building the bridges between Russia and Asian Pacific region countries. But there's the outflow of population, which is still going on. So whom do we develop the Russian Far East for? And the second question, what's the ratio between Russian and foreign money which is provided? Is it true that Asia are interested only in raw materials in Russia, only in resources? You know, there are some scary tales that we keep telling each other before going to bed, but I want to tell you that we manage those processes in the interests of the Russian Federation. We think, first of all, about creating new jobs, setting up new plants here so that people start to live better. But at the same time, we don't want to close ourselves to international cooperation. This is about losing, so we need to be open, we need to be friendly, and I think that this is how this forum accepted these guests and welcomed these guests. By welcoming our guests, or while welcoming them, we should also think about now our national interests, and even our guests understand this very well. Nothing can change here. As to your question, you asked the first question about what? I'm sorry? About the outflow of the population. Well, here it's quite simple as well. If we stop the outflow immediately, well, I don't know any tools that can be used for this, unless we write down a law or adopt some law which would prohibit people from going out, from leaving the country. There is only one instrument here: creating highly paid new jobs, creating a new company, making people's life better, creating a better infrastructure. And I cannot understand what it is about 1.3 trillion rubles, the amount of our agreements. That's much more than what we expected to get. But this money will come to the region. This money will be in the Russian Far East. So we are going to live with this. As for the outflow of the population, it dropped by half over the past several years, but it is still there. And we base ourselves on the fact that the measures taken by us in the economic area, the measures taken in terms of the opportunities for investments and the services that we are going to develop after adopting the relevant law regarding the allocation of plots of land in the Far East, all of this goes together. There is no single universal solution. All of this comes part by part, but coming together, all those little steps will resolve this problem together. As a result, we will have positive migration in the Russian Far East, and not negative. Sometimes I'm asked questions regarding the program for migration of people, but we never aimed at creating such a program. We understand it all too well. We understand that in order to develop a migration program, we need to change many other things too. We just took the first step, and we made a survey, a public survey. Thousands of people actually said that they were ready to move to another place if they are given a hectare of land. And now we believe that this will change the situation with the outflow of the population.
Hello, Anna Zebrova, Kommersant newspaper. A few questions. The first one, did you recommend to the government or the president to relocate a fishery from the government? And the second question is connected with TAD, to give quotas, and what kind of mechanisms are given to the enterprises of the TAD. The first question, I did not propose to the government to relocate Rosrybalovstvo, the fishery department, to the government. If the government takes such a decision, I'm going to follow suit. We have 65% that is occupied by the fishery industry in the Far East, but I'm not going to play these political games. relocation, in transferring positions, in renaming the ministries. It takes too much time without any particular outcome. So I wouldn't like to lose my time for the activities which will not bring any effective result for the development of this industry. If it happens otherwise, I will not be unhappy, but I'm not going to play these games. I'm not going to waste my time on the relocation of this industry to another ministry. So the time is one of the basic resources that we have to rely on. The second issue, we've been discussing it at the sessions in the parliament, in the government. The country has its own interest, and its interest in the area of fishing is to enlarge, and the area we would like to process marine production on the territory of the Russian Federation. We want to build vessels in Russia, so we need quotas, we need subsidies from the government. Unfortunately, those mechanisms have not yet been created. Today, our Chinese colleagues said, why do Koreans have more quotas than the Chinese? That's an old story. A long time ago, the government promised to build a processing factory, but had not fulfilled its obligations.
Vitaly Halimov, Parliament newspaper. Our newspaper has many times raised the issue of the free gold mining, so that not only companies but even individual entrepreneurs can mine some gold. It's particularly important for the Magadan region. The Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Donskoy, said that this will be permitted, and the question is when this will happen, and what's your attitude towards this law? Well, when I mentioned the results of this forum, I believe that the ice has been broken and some processes started. But I can't say that everything is good here. You will not believe me, and this is not true. As for the law on free gold mining, I think we need to adopt that law. There is nothing bad about it. People can work at minor gold mines if they work on some technogenous sections where most of the gold has already been produced. There is no problem about that. But for now, there are a lot of opponents of this law, the same amount as proponents of it. So there's a balance between them. There is some equilibrium. So we are trying to move on. But for the time being, some ministries have a pretty negative position regarding this law. There are some arguments. You asked for my opinion. My opinion is that we need to adopt this law.
Good afternoon, Yegor Kovalenko, Vesti FM, Vladivostok. Two questions as to quotas on aquaculture. When will those quotas be introduced in the Far East? And the second, how long will it take to launch the Northern Sea route? Once again, the first question, could you repeat that? On quotas, I'd like to clarify the issue on quotas concerning aquaculture. Will they be introduced? Well, let's start with the Northern Sea route. It's difficult to say when the Northern Sea route will become competitive. I may not answer that question just offhand. What can be said about the Northern Sea route is that it is very, very prospective and promising. and the conditions of vessel passway through the ice is from 3 to 4 months. And construction can be conducted in shifts with a 9-month break. These are very difficult conditions in which we have to or plan to build a number of ports and channels. So it's a huge, all-embracive project. This project is a transit logistic project. We don't have such volumes of production that we need to export and from the Far East to the European part of the country. This is a project which will allow us, above all, to provide for the export of production of China, Korea, Singapore. It has to be a joint project in my mind, but the limitations and restrictions are tied to the time schedule, to the seasonal breaks. I would probably be talking about the assembly time terms, deadlines. If within a year and a half we will be able to manage to compile the project, to document the project and make a roadmap of the following project, naming the ports, naming the time term, and this would be one of the first steps, and I would say a good result.
Can you hear me now? Yes? Russian newspaper, Российская газета. That's a question related to the Northern Sea Route. The Chinese said today that one of the priority themes for them in the Far East is the project Northern Sea Route. But it's not very clear. Maybe you could explain this to us. What is your vision of participation of foreign investors in the project Northern Sea Route? How can they do this? Maybe they will just use this transit route and that's it? Thank you. I don't understand what you meant by this question, how, when you mentioned the investors. That might be the construction of supporting ships. Unfortunately, this sector is only being structured in Russia. This can be the financing of port construction, of port building, because you remember that Vladimir Putin yesterday ordered to roll out the status of a free port to other ports of the region, and this involves a lot of work. Of course, we will fulfill the request of the president, but I would like to tell you that this is not just about writing some amendments to a law, because this is a huge job. Each port needs to be managed properly, and we need to make sure that all the controlling bodies and all the authorities interact quite well with each other. Because what is it? A free port. A free port is a port where the customs procedures are very quick, where there is no need to wait for some expert assessments and permits to build buildings or facilities. And this is the interaction at all the levels of the government, because what we usually have is that businesses start working, but then they find out suddenly that they need to wait for 1 year before they get all the necessary permits. Then, if the cargo arrives, it waits at the customs for 1 week, and all of this results in additional costs. We need to learn how to do this very quickly. We will do this, of course. We will start with Vladivostok, and I think that we will gain some experience here, as to how to do this quickly and in the right way. We have people who are ready to share their experience and technologies with us, because free ports work efficiently in the world, and after that we could roll this out to other territories. And all of this in totality is the work on preparing the Northern Sea route. It cannot work in any other way.
Olga Merkulova, Information Agency, Восток, Россия. Will there be any changes introduced into the law on TADs? And the second question deals with the capitalization of the Far East, the additional capitalization of the Far East. Unfortunately, I can't hear what you're saying due to the fact that the microphone is possibly not working in the right way. So once again, could you repeat the question? And I cannot translate the question because I cannot hear it. The translators cannot hear the question.
Тот механизм
The mechanism of the additional capitalization of the Far East and the fund, which has been set out in the decree of the President, will be outlined in the projects. For the mechanism to be employed, we will not take too much time. But in order to receive return on investments from new projects, they need to be launched. Therefore, realistically, this mechanism will start working in 2 to 3 years' time from now. We need to think on how the fund will operate from the year 2016 to 2017. The fund has been launched, and the money it has will be spent in the near future. There's huge demand for resources and quite a number of projects that need to be funded. There's no particular decision as to this issue, but we need to follow through the above-mentioned corridor by possibly using financial institutes of our investors who were present at the forum. As to the law on TADs, I personally have not heard any remarks as to the law. Laws can in the future be amended and improved. Maybe something should be regulated, but at this launching phase, in order to stimulate and incentivize investments, the law is quite sufficient. A lot of people actually have changed their plans and decided to come to the forum after having read the law, which is quite positive. Alexandra Терентьева.
Alexandra Terentьева, Vedomosti, there have been a lot of problems and troubles with the organization. It just beat all the records. Are there any concerns that no one will come here next year because of that, despite the law on TADs? You know, we really had problems with the registration of participants for a simple reason. 2,500 people came here and there were just 1,000 places. So when I was told that people came here who were not on the list, but they are at the airport, and who were not allowed here, we made a decision to accept everyone who came here. If we had taken a different decision, then people would have to just turn around, and that was unacceptable. So we had to accept 1,500 people more than we had invited, and that was a difficult thing to do. The second thing, people come to Forum to work, and I have never heard from anyone, except for the Vladivostok newspaper, that anyone remembered about the difficulties connected with providing the badges. Everyone speaks about the new opportunities regarding investment in the Far East, and that's interesting to work here, but everyone wants to hear what they like.
Margarita Krичко, Inform Agency. You were telling us about the necessity of introducing quotas for the construction of new capacities of the fleet, the marine fleet, and but I'm interested in whether the quotas are going to be covering the Russian or the domestic or international wharfs. Well, actually, we're drawing to the end of this conference, but I didn't say anything about the wharfs and shipbuilding. I did reiterate the processing facilities and the necessity to use quotas for the construction of processing facilities. But when we mention either tax benefits or other government mechanisms and institutes for development, they are all created to stimulate the development of the region. So all the instruments that were presented at the forum are aimed for the development of the Far East. We're not going to use them for the benefit of foreign economies. That is quite evident. Otherwise, that would be incorrect for the development of the region. And in conclusion, I would like to reiterate what I said in the first place. We were very attentive to the organization of the forum and discussing the issue whether we need another forum or not. But today I can absolutely say that we need a forum of the kind. We need the next forum. And I received the same complimentary and positive assessment from the president of the Russian Federation. The forum has to take place in a location where people are interested in participating in the forum and where we need to create a favorable climate and environment for investors. It was a unique opportunity, and a number of businessmen have come despite being very busy at this period of time.